let's just start by introducing yourself, like who you are, and just give us a brief history of what you've done. So I'll also learn something. So let's go way back when you kind of entered the church scene or the Christian scene. Was music a role player there, or kind of how did that start? Kind of music and church. What was the link?
Yeah. So for me, I started out. I grew up in the church. My dad was a pastor. He's retired now, but my dad was a pastor, so I grew up in the church. But I started out in my early teens as a sound engineer. I'd be the guy who would go to the storeroom every Sunday morning, haul out the analog sound desk, drag it to the back of the church, plug in all the cables, and then try and mix the band, which had 4 aunties, 2 of them literally my own aunties, 4 aunties, a couple of guitarists, and a drummer, and I try and make sense of all of it. So that's where I started. And then slowly but surely, I started out playing drums. Then I moved to bass. Then I moved to acoustic. Then I moved to piano. And I'm now mostly playing guitar and electric guitar and leading worship in churches and church settings. So that's my church history. And then throughout the early 2000s up until about 2010, 2012, I did a lot of work and touring with Christian rock band I was in called Reason. And so we did that, and we were very lucky to support and play with 363 and Delirious and a whole bunch of others. So yeah, that's a little bit of my history. And since then, it's just been in serving the church in whatever capacity I can, but mostly in music and arts.
Cool. And so, I mean, you obviously learned on the job, so to speak. Obviously, you taught yourself a lot of these instruments. Did you ever get to a stage where you stopped learning? I mean, how did you carry on learning, or kind of how did you carry on upskill yourself when you weren't necessarily going to school or music school? How did you kind of manage to do that?
So I think the biggest thing for me, and I don't know if it was a gift, something that comes naturally to everyone, but I always had I had an ear for being able to listen very well to what other people were doing. And so as a youngster, for example, I remember sitting at sound checks and all that sort of stuff, watching John Ellis from 363, watching him play, watching him set his amps, watching what he did. And then when I'd get up to go and do my sound check, I would try and mimic those sounds. I'd try and hear, and then always just try and befriend the people that I thought I could learn from, and people who could teach me well, And so I have a whole host of people in my church life that I befriended, that I'd learned from, that I would spend time at their house where they'd be explaining things to me, we'd be playing through songs together and all that sort of stuff. But in the early days, I definitely, because I didn't have the resources for music schools, and there weren't many music schools around either. Yeah. So because I didn't have the resources and all that sort of stuff, I'd watch and learn, and then approach people that I thought were good at something and ask them to teach me stuff.
Yeah, I like what you said there about, I mean, what a great inspiration than John Ellis when it comes to guitar sound, to have somebody there that you could kind of look at, go, cool, I dig that, let's mimic that. And I think it's a great way to learn, is trying to mimic other people, especially people who get it right. So it's great that you mentioned that, is there a better teacher than experience, so... And I mean, John's sound is famous, especially back in the day. Great inspiration.
Yeah, and exactly, and I mean, I know we're going to touch on stewardship, but that's one thing that's a credit to John, is that John and I met in 2005, and we're still amazing friends. We chat every day, especially now during lockdown. We're talking 10 times a day on WhatsApp and all that sort of stuff. But the one thing that I can really take my hat off with John is that he took the time, aside from me hearing and seeing what I liked and what I heard and what I thought was good, is when I'd get up to do my sound check, I'd turn around and John would be at my amps, and he'd be busy tweaking my amp, and then he'd come to my pedal board and he'd tweak my pedal board and he'd say, doesn't that sound better? Listen to this. Oh, you see, you had this like this, but if you change this to this, then all of a sudden, you know, this happens and this cuts through the mix. And so all of a sudden I had this guy that I did some shows with, and he was teaching me. And I never asked him to. And, you know, geez, if each one of us can do that to a couple of people, we'd be changing the worship scene in a healthy way completely.
Yeah. Great discipleship, I guess. I mean, that's what it is at the end of the day, is having that journeyman. And I think, yeah, that's incredible what he did there for you, you know. So, yeah, and I think we do need to see more of that, you know. I think, first of all, those people that you can look up to in worship teams, and then second of all, people willing to learn from them. So really need to, you know, and I think it works two ways. It's kind of the excellence and then the hunger, you know, and I think those two things, that when they meet, you know, you kind of have exponential growth, you know.
Yeah.
So talking about stewardship, so obviously you do run a worship team, and, you know, I know in this day and age now, I mean, I can also, you know, been in worship for many years, and I think one of the things we battled with was that kind of like, what do we do with people that aren't quite there yet, you know, or what do we do with people that got a heart for worship that need to grow, you know? So I just want to talk a bit about our responsibility to grow as musicians, whether it be to play in church or whether it be to take a gifting that God has given us to do original music, you know, regardless of that. Can you just talk a few minutes on stewardship, talking about those gifts and those talents and responsibility to really to grow them?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm very blessed in the sense that at the moment where I am, I run a few different worship teams with 4 other people, and it really makes it easier in that we've got a music director, we've got someone handling admin, we've got a worship pastor, and we've got someone handling theology of songs and all that sort of stuff. So that helps a lot, and it lightens the load.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is, but in life, whether you're an accountant or a guitarist, you've got to push to be the best that you can be in your field, you know? Yeah. So at the end of the day, look, I've been very lucky and very happy to have played in some of the biggest churches in this country and been involved in massive worship teams, big churches, small churches. And the one thing you see everywhere, which I wish we could all get over, is competition. You know, this guitarist wants to be better than that one, or if there's 2 guitarists, they're bickering about who's going to play what parts and all that sort of stuff, you know. Yeah. None of that matters. You know, you touched on excellence. Like, so I'm a firm believer that excellence isn't the goal. The changed lives are the goal. That excellence is the tool that's going to help you get there. Yeah. Right? For sure. You know, and so there's nothing worse for me than if I walk into a church and I'm here and I want to connect with God's people and we want to sing songs to God, and there's distractions all over that stage. You know, the guitar's out of tune and this and that, and it's really not a thing of I'm better than anyone up there or that. Like, no, we've all got to do our best to get rid of all distractions. That's all you want. You don't have to be showy, you don't have to be flashy, you just want to get rid of distractions. Your job, first and foremost, as a worship team, as someone in a worship team, is to be able to lead the people of God into worship, right? This is not your time to shine, and it's your time to worship, but that's not your primary objective while you're there. You're leading God's people to a place where, you know, if the church can be completely unaware that the worship team is even there, then you've started hitting on something that's really good, you know. And so at the end of the day, it's up to everybody to hone their skill and do what they can. But then it's up to me as a leader to recognize gifting, see who needs work, see who's got it and who doesn't have it. Bro, I'll never be an accountant. I mean, I haul out my calculator for 8 times 8. Like I've got, you know, it's just not a gifting of mine, you know. And so not everybody's going to be super gifted at being a musician, and you know, and so that's the hard thing is straddling the line within your environment of knowing where the gifting lies, where the gifting doesn't lie, and being able to love people and use them regardless of whether they can or do something, or can or cannot do something. There's many, bro. There's AV, there's sound, there's lighting. There's so many in today's churches. There's so many areas of worship that people can get involved in. So we need to be mindful of it. That if someone doesn't have a gifting, it's not the end of the road of their worship journey.
Yeah,
it's just an opportunity to be somewhere else.
For sure. Now, okay, so something else I'd like to ask you is how do we create a healthy environment for people to not feel like it is competitive? In other words, how do you inspire to help people with insecurities and to create an environment where everybody just wants to see the end result, and understand that it is no competition, but that we've all got our different roles and responsibilities, etc. And some people obviously are just going to be better than others. That's just how it is, right? So how do you kind of create that environment?
I think it starts right at the beginning with vision and mission. Everyone's got to be on the same page about what they're here to do. You know, we hammer down firmly with our guys. This is not the time to shine. You know, we're here to serve the person next to you and the people in front of you, and that's it. If you get everybody on the same page, you know, and sometimes you've got to hammer it in. You, especially with younger people, you just got to keep driving. You've got to keep driving, because at the end of the day, what they see and what they mimic is American contemporary worship, which is in our faces all the time. And those guys are writing amazing songs and doing amazing things. But to many degrees, what people are seeing is a product. It's a packaged product. And so we want to be that in our home churches, in in our country and all that sort of stuff. And we're not that. We need to be authentic about who we are and what we do. You know, if you get everybody on the same page about the vision, who's here, what we're here to do it for, then all that other little stuff starts falling away. You know, it becomes more of a, how can I help you? How can I help you shine, instead of how can I help myself shine?
Okay, well then, I see. I mean, you touched slightly on young people. How do you? Also, another question is create an environment where experience and young, maybe not so experienced, but like, you know, a young horse, you know, very excited, don't butt heads, but there becomes an exponential growth and just a synergy between those people.
Look, where there's people, there's going to be butting of heads, right? Whether it's, you know, older, more experienced people with younger people, or at the end of the day, personalities will clash and things will happen. So we need to give ourselves grace, and for just the fact that we are all separate individual human beings and God's created us this way. But again, I think it comes down to getting alongside somebody and trying to help them. And as an older person in a worship team, sometimes the easiest thing to do is to heap praise on the younger guys that are coming through and doing things, not to what's the word I'm looking for? Not to be condescending or anything, but heap praise on them and encourage them, because that's going to open a door for a relationship, and eventually you'll be able to speak into what they do and how they do it. You know,
yeah.
It is tough. The world's changed a lot. You know, youngsters nowadays are not the way I was when I was younger, and that's not to say I was any better. It's just we were different. We grew up in a different era and a different age. You know, but having said that, man, if I had the resources available to me that these guys coming through worship teams have now, bro, YouTube is the world for tutorials for anything, you know, and stuff like you're doing with Zeal. There was none of that stuff because everything had to happen face to face, you know, and the online world changes everything and makes it so much better for us to be able to steward people and push them in the right direction. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think, look, is anything else you'd like to add almost in closing, considering maybe that, you know, our main thing is to really come alongside churches and offer the structure so that they can equip people that might not have the opportunity, but importantly for us is doing it in community, so people grow together, creating that kind of likeness in culture, in heart, in mind, in you know what I mean, just almost creating a team, as opposed to just doing these individual things. So one thing that we really focus on is the team, the togetherness aspect of growing, and then obviously one heart, one mind, and culture. Is there anything you want to touch on just closing on equipping? And I don't know if that made absolute sense what I said there. I suppose I didn't really ask you a question.
No, it does. I mean, look, the team dynamic it's huge. It's everything, and I'm realizing it now in this lockdown period. When you start missing the faces that drive you up the wall on Thursday night at band practice, and that's a family, hey? That's how family operates. So, bro, the only thing I can do is just encourage you. I've seen little bits of what you guys are doing, and it's really special. It starts with community and family, and it grows from there. Like that's the basis for everything. Get everyone on the same page, same vision, same heart for excellence, same heart for changed lives, and it grows from there. For sure.
Cool, man, Jason. Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate your time and just some of your inner knowledge, from years and years and years of experience.
When everyone starts together at the beginning and they all end at the end, and there's never a moment where somebody's not playing, and that's 80% of the problem right there. But I get every now and then I get a call, hey, please come to my church's band practice. They sound awful. Just come and give me your 10 cents of what's going on. Bro, there are so many churches out there. Yeah. The whole, they've heard it a million times. They just can't grasp it. Less is more. Dude, they think if the worship team's struggling, the more people you throw on stage, the better it's going to sound.
Yeah.
So they'll have 3 or 4 acoustic guitarists there who are all average. And then they'll have one person who can kind of sing. And then they're not happy with him, so they throw another 3 people who can't sing with him. And you end up with, like, I'm not joking, bro, some churches, 20 people on the stage, and it's a royal mess. And I say to the pastor, I'm like, you would be better off with that guy leading worship, just him with an acoustic guitar on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Because you remove all those other distractions.
See, but how did we get to this place, bro? How did we get to a place where instead of it becoming a place of, of doing a role of what you feel I've never thought of myself as anything else but a musician and went out to raise a standard in the church. I don't think of myself as, the avid fisherman, or a full-time fisherman, although I enjoy fishing, or a account, like you said, I dig numbers. So where did this happen, bro? That this was allowed to be because that's become the culture in a lot of churches, is that it's kind of a free for all, and if you don't let somebody on, you're going to offend them, and so where did it all go that way?
I'll tell you where I think it came from, and it comes from a lack of understanding, and I have to explain this to pastors and leaders as well, because it comes up a lot. Is, bro, the modern contemporary worship move that we see has come from Hillsong, right? And any Hillsong recording back from Darlene days to now, there's 20 people on the stage.
Yeah.
And what they're not understanding is they will look and they will see Reuben Morgan and 3 other worship leaders, and they're all on acoustic guitars, right? Yeah. And so they think, oh, I can have 4 acoustics up there. Like, no, you can't, because go back and listen to the actual recording of the song. You can't even hear an acoustic in it, Yeah. So that's where it comes from. It's that Hillsong and now all the other churches, they've got these full stages with 10 worship leaders, 4 acoustic guitars, 4 electric guitars, and. But what they're not understanding is that, it's weird, their jaws drop when I tell them. I'm like, those guitars aren't being used on the recording. Yeah. They're like, what? I'm like, can you hear an acoustic guitar on any of it? And they are, no, we can't. So why are they letting him do it? I'm like, because it's his comfort. It's his comfort. That's how he leads worship. That's what he does. He has a bit of it in his monitor, and he's happy, But it's because we mimic. We want to copy what we see other people who are good at what they do, but we don't have the understanding to look at those 20 people and go, like, you know what, of those 20, there's probably only 8 of them in the mix that we hear.
And then just to add on to that is, obviously now you've got 20 people, but now let's say 12 of them actually can't play. How did that happen? How did the church become that place of fulfilling your insecurities as opposed to a place of excellence, of doing your best? You know, like you said, excellence is the journey. You know, but you know, we're constantly working at something. You know, how did that?
I think it's because people who don't have a musical understanding would look at it and go, that guy's half decent at guitar. If I take another guy who's half decent at guitar, I have one guy combined who's good at guitar. But it doesn't work that way. That's the problem. It's the age-old mentality of, you know, if there's a broken car and a mechanic can't fix it, and you throw 10 other mechanics in the mix, they'll eventually get the problem sorted. Music is uniquely different in that sense. Is that there's a broken team, and people want to throw more people at it to try and fix it, but they're just making the noise louder and louder and louder. Yeah. The louder the noise gets, the worse it sounds, and then the more people they want to add to the mix to fix it. And less is more. Most of these churches should take those 10 people they have on stage, strip it right down to 3, and they'd have a better worship experience on a Sunday.
And then at least, I suppose, start setting a standard from there, a standard of level and what you. I mean, at some stage we have to go. You know, I'm just battling to put into words, but a level of skill. Surely there has to be a level of skill before you can just climb onto any stage, regardless of that. But even sometimes I think even more so the church, you know, because you know that's kind of.
But have auditions, bro.
That's
what auditions.
Say again?
Yeah, I say they've got to have auditions, and no one auditions, right?
Yeah.
So many of the smaller churches I've come across don't audition because they're like, oh, he's got the heart for worship. I'm like, great. I have a heart for speaking to people when I have coffee, but you don't get me on stage to preach.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just that.
I've seen.
Bro, so it's because you don't know how to say no to people, right? As a worship leader, when people in the church come and they want to audition. So we figured out the way around this a little bit sneaky. The way our auditions work is if you came to me on a Sunday and said you'd like to join the worship team, I'll tell you, okay, cool. What you need to do is, here's an email address, music@bbc. Just send us an audio clip that you record on your phone of you playing and singing, or just singing whatever instrument you play. Send us an audio clip. Like, that's stage one. At that stage one, we can normally hear if this is worth a live audition or not. If it's not worth a live audition, we reply from music@bbc, kind regards, we find, we'll word it nicely, that you need to work on your gifting and. Kind regards, BBC Worship Department. So it comes from a department, not a person, right? So there's no one for them to point fingers at.
Yeah.
And then the same thing, from there we'll go to a live audition, and the 4 of us or 5 of us will sit and listen to them. We'll get them to play with click, we'll get them to play with a track, we'll get them to sing harmony, blah, 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 do all that stuff. And then the same process after that, bro. If they're going to hear back from anyone, they're going to hear from the worship department. I know not all churches have the luxury of that.
Yeah.
But,